Have we lost our minds into 2023? We're talking about AI fears. This is just keeps on going over and over. So I thought I do, thinking first principles and check my biases, and really look into this from a fresh perspective, and learn as much as I can on how machine learning works so that I know enough to really look at this issue. First of all, Happy New Year. 2024 is going to be an exciting year, despite all the bad news that keeps on coming. So let's get started. AI fears, real or overhyped? Let's look at this. First, let's talk about the fear types that I'm seeing across the board. And I sort of categorize this into two categories. So there's the existential fears. The AI will kill us all. AI will replace us. We're going to lose control and it's going to go haywire. There's so many different versions. I think you've seen it all, I'm sure. And then there's the sort of what I call societal fears. It will take our jobs, harmful in the it's going to be very harmful in the wrong hands. And inequality, that's an interesting one. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is going to be widened. These are some of the fears that's going on. So I'm going to try to address some of this. My perspective on the subject. I've questioned this for so long before I did this episode because I kept thinking, what am I missing? Because these are AI experts. These are not media outlets, CNNs of the world, the clickbaity news media outlets that are propping. I mean, I don't take that too seriously anymore. Right? I think most of us don't take that too seriously anymore because the incentives are misaligned, as we know, in the entire news media. But what's interesting is the AI experts are talking about it, so that's throwing me off, right? It's like, okay, am I missing something? Am I missing something? This is something, um, have I made a decision and then looking for evidence to support my claims, right? Am I making that mistake, right? This is something I'm extremely fearful of, if you will. So start from a blank slate and look at the evidence across the board, and then make a judgment or make a decision, not have an opinion subconsciously already and look for supporting views, supporting evidences. So this is something I'm watching out for. So some of the experts in the field are discussing some of the existential risks. Right, that's when it throws me off. Societal risk, rational. I get it. We'll talk about that too. But the good news is there are AI experts like Facebook chief scientist Jan Khan. I think I'm not sure if I'm butchering his name. It's something someone who I admire. He thinks this is completely overblown too. So there are experts on other side of the fence as well. So that's the good news, right? Because I have not completely lost my mind, if you will. As I'm sure you've guessed by now, I think it's mostly irrational fears. And here are my reasons. Existential, neophobia. Psychologists call this neophobia, which is the fear of the unknown. It is predominantly our amygdala is huge because we had to survive while we're living in the caves and the noise in the bushes, noise behind the bushes. We have to be alert, of course, otherwise we'll get killed, right? So there is a huge evolutionary reasons why we always by default have the fear of the unknown, which is completely understandable. But we have to keep it in check, right? Is it rational? Is what we need to figure out, not just emotional response to emotional response, because that's what the default setting is in our brain based on the evolution. This is something that we have to be very careful about. What's interesting is that the one way to objectively look at this is I ask myself, there's been new technologies, since the fire, right? We invented fire. we discovered fire, trains to electricity, all these things. Like, how did we behave then, right? Because those are as novel as it is AI. AI might be much more novel than fire and then all the new technology. No, it's not. Everything is always novel when it's novel, right? Or I should say, everything is always very novel compared to the past, right? It's always like that. When you're in it, it's hard for us to judge. It's hard for us to predict what this new technology is going to do for the human society. That's the unknown, right? And that's where the fear is born, if you will. Our job is to figure out, okay, is this going to be it? Is this why we can't find any? There's the Drake equation. We can't find any aliens. Is this what's going to kill us all? Right? It's all valid questions. But we have to keep it in check. Examples, right? Fire was also scary for us. Trains were also scary. Yes, they were. And here's what I've been reading is that back then humans thought we're not designed for that speed, the train speed, when they're invented, because the human body can't take that speed. Well, I guess G-force. I mean, these are some of the human body concerns during the train days, if you will. Um, and electricity, same thing. And that's that. I mean, electrocution, child safety was a big one when it comes to electricity. Cars is a great example. People were freaking out that this machine was moving by itself, right? Even though there's input. So they had a require. I think there was a regulation that somebody needs to be up in the front of the each of these cars waving a red flag so that watch out, we're going to run over you for safety reasons. And these are some of the things that happen. Let me use examples, at least in my lifetime, that we can all connect to it a little better. Cell phones. The number one headline in the news was that 2000. I don't remember vaguely. In the 2000 early 2000s, where's cancer? Cell phones causes cancer. It's good to be worried. It's good to, because again, something's novel. We got to figure that out. But we were freaking out, right? Freaking out. So cell phones, but boy, I haven't heard a peep for so long, right? About cancer and cell phones. Y2K. That I vividly remember, because there was Y2K project I took on. I remember this. People were so worried that computers were designed to have two-digit year, and then it's going to go to from 99 to 00, right? And all the electronics are going to freak out. I remember planes are going to fall out from the sky, and people went to the ATM and withdraw all of their cash. Some. It's insane. So it clearly, I mean, clearly we're very good at freaking out irrationally. So we have to keep that in perspective. And some of you may think it's like, hey, VJ, like, you're bringing up these examples, but those are very different, right? They're very different than AI. Look at the AI. I mean, the thing it can do, believe me, it is always different. When the new technologies, that when you're in it, it is it looks always different. It looks always scary. It's always, this time is different. It's always been that way, whether it's fire or not. So 100 years from now, we're going to look back and go, "Oh my god, this is so silly." This is the same thing. It is the same thing. It's the novelty, the fear of the novelty, fear of the unknown is what's causing us to freak out. This does not mean I'm not I'm saying there's zero risk, right? I'll talk about that in a minute. So so absolutely, like, nuclear weapons is a great example. I mean, that is a very dangerous weapon that can also give us abundance of energy. We have to there's It's clearly not zero risk, but these some of these risks that we're discussing are just silly. They're freaking out everyday people for no reason, in my opinion. In fact, they're freaking out some of the smartest people, which is boggles my mind. I am open to the fact that I might be wrong in all this, right? This is just my perspective as I learn. Let's talk about societal fears. These are the job displacements. Again, this was absolutely true when the Industrial Revolution happened. Then the machines took over the manufacturing, and people were not happy, right? Because of, what are we going to do with our time? How are we going to make money? How are we going to feed our family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? This It happens every single time. That's why I believe we need to look back into the state of mind we were in for us to properly judge our state of mind that we're in today, right? Because it's the fear of the unknown is it's very powerful, right? And radio and TV, fear of loss in privacy. Somebody's going to listen, tap into our phones. Fear of misinformation was pretty high. Computers is an interesting one. This is, now it's sort of my time taking jobs, right? For whether it's accounting, and I vaguely remember all sorts of job displacements possibilities that freaked us out. Internet, this was my time, in the mid to late 90s. I still remember where we were worried about, librarians were seen as the cornerstone of education. We were worried about what are we going to do with our librarians if they're not going to have jobs. Library is this area where a lot of the educations have all, et cetera, et cetera. So people were very nervous about adopting internet. There is, I don't think there's a human being on earth that would say internet was net negative, right? I mean, it the what do they say? The great tide lifts all boats. Am I saying it right? And same thing, right? It made temporarily displacement. It's a transitional problem, right? I which I completely agree with. How do we, if it happens too suddenly, the displacement will hurt, right? Temporarily. So we have to look out for that, and we have to figure out a solution for that, so that it's not so painful during the transition time. But the worries about whether we should do it or not, it's just silly, because the opportunities, the net positivity to society is going to be astronomical, in my opinion. And no, all of it is not going to just the rich people, right? Yes, the 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 gap between the haves and the have-nots, we always have to monitor and bridge that gap as much as possible. So that has nothing to do with AI. It is not going. I don't see it increasing or decreasing the gap, right? I think the way I'm thinking about it is it's a huge tide that's going to lift all boats, right? Um, if anything, and I hate to say it, if anything, my money is going to be, it's going to be shrinking the gap, right? Because going forward, the I think society is going to change quite a bit, in my opinion, right? And so let's talk about that. What that changes, how I'm thinking about it. So yeah, I'm an optimist, right? I think it's a utopian future, very likely. We have to be careful about the risks. Like any powerful tool, we just like every other crazy tool that we've invented. Why do I think it's utopian future? Companies like Figure AI, for example, I just read there was a breakthrough where they're using deep learning to train the robot, where the robot watches the video of how to make coffee, right? The Keurig single cup, uh, and just by watching video, again, it was not trained or coded to lift the pot, put it in the machine, and make coffee. It learned by itself just by looking at videos. Now, it's very rudimentary. I get it. That advancement the implications are huge, right? As we get better, better, better at this. Figure AI, Tesla Bot is, two of the companies I know. I'm sure there are more. The advent of AGI. AGI is another term that I can do a whole nother episode on, because here's I'll summarize it. The AGI bar just keeps moving up, right? As we achieve it, we move it up. That's not really AGI. Okay, we get there. Turing test pass. Well, yeah, it passed Turing test, but really, no, AGI is up here. It's always been true. Again, it's always been true, right? We keep moving the bar up. So, I think when we will know it one day, when we achieved AGI, I think, right? And it's just these transition little steps. It's hard to know when we have reached it. AGI is a whole nother topic that I got to really think about and do research on it before I comment on it. So, but I think, I call this human labor economy. That's gonna come out. I think we'll need to sort this out. many of my friends I talk to, I think they start to believe. I'm sure they're thinking I've lost my mind when it comes to this, because it's very difficult for us to predict what the impact is. Just like when I ask myself what was my state of mind in 2000, and there's no way in hell I would have predicted what we're doing today. There's no way. It's very hard for us to look ahead and imagine what the future is going to be like. So I am making that leap. It is going to be post-human labor economy, which means it's not going to be predominantly labor. It's a lot of the robots are going to do a lot of the work that we need. I think it's going to be net huge positive. Right? It is not. That doesn't mean we're going to be twiddling our thumbs and we don't have a meaning of life. So I'm depressed. That sort of thing. I mean, the impact is going to be across the industry. I think it's going to be deflationary in a massive way. Everything is going to get cheaper. Why? Because it's not powered by human labor, right? And to run, so the energy is going to be heading to zero. We're going to find new materials and far better solar panels, robots that are walking around doing a lot of the work. Things are just going to be very cheap, right? So that's why I think it's sort of like because originally I was thinking UBI, right? But trying to work that in, I don't know. I'm not an economist, so there's a lot more on this topic that we can talk about. But the one thing it's clear to me that it's massively deflationary, and that's going to make everything cheaper. I think human suffering is going to go way down across the board. We all need to do our parts to make sure that the value of this is felt across the board, everybody. I think it's the so this is why I think the divide between the haves and the have-nots. Maybe I'm too of an optimist, but I'm certainly not convinced that it's going to widen the gap. If it's going to affect it, I think it's going to shrink the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So, and I think this is a fantastic thing for the humans. I think when you don't have to worry about food, shelter, all of your basic needs, right? Massive implications on healthcare, right? We're going to cure diseases. The alpha fold, I'm sure you've all heard of, trying to figure out, what the behavior of different proteins, discovery of different proteins. So it's going to have massive, a huge effect. I mean, we've already made some humongous progress on it. So I think we're going to continue, especially with AGI and some of these emergent property that we're seeing in the machine learning models. That's going to help solve healthcare, education, and education is another topic I'm super passionate about. I'm not at all, and I have never been a fan of our standard education system. We teach to the test, right? That's what I'm learning from my own kids, myself, and majority of the thing. I mean, not majority, 99. I would say 95+% of what I know now was not really from my education system. I mean, very little. It was an excruciating experience. It was just a terrible experience for me. Maybe I didn't go to the right school. I don't know. But personalized education is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I think it's going to be one-on-one tutor based, like understanding as real-time assessments by the tutor and getting there's no tests, all this bullshit, right? It's all about the AI tutor, right? Has in unlimited amount of patience, right? Like way more than I with the kids, and really tailors the education to the individual student. That's what's going to be about. So education is going to be different. And for those of you who think, well, what about the children's social? Yes, social is a huge important factor, but there are other ways to solve that problem. Forcing children to sit there for 6 hours or hours on end to do homework which they hate doing. I mean, that it just doesn't make any sense to me, right? It's got to be far more hands-on, far more engaging, far more interactive, and so education has a long way to go, right? Employment is also going to change, right? It'll be dramatically different. So we were thinking that the menial jobs automated away, and the creative jobs are going to be done by humans. Well, that surprised us. Now, it can generate code. It can generate beautiful pictures. It's absolutely incredible. So some of these things we see, it's a lot more than we expected. So even the software engineers that are a little worried, right? So I mean, at this point, it's all about productivity increase, right? That's the from a single. So in other words, one engineer can now do 10 engineers worth of work, maybe more, right? Maybe 100x is. I think it's more of the latter, but we'll see. So employment's going to be different. Let me wrap this up. I think it's going. I think I'm voting for utopia. I'm an optimist, at least for me. I'm super excited, and with 99% of what I'm reading is negative, is it's insane, right? It's depressing. It is not. I don't see it, right? And yes, there are small risks that we need to. Every new adventure, every step we take, there's going to be risk. Of course, these are acceptable risks that we need to take to move humanity to the next level, right? It's part of the game, right? But it is not at the level of calling for regulation now and setting a number of parameters as the ceiling of what you can do. I mean, that's putting the cart before the horse. What the hell are we trying to regulate? We're still trying to figure out what this is, right, and how it's working. Let's go a little longer. I'm not anti regulation. I'm anti stupid regulation, right? So and regulation always has unintended consequences. Other countries are going to move fast, so it's the cat's out of the bag, right? So there's not much choice that we have anyway. But I think it's utopia. Thank you. Till next time. Ciao.